On a warm summer afternoon in 1945, a 10-year-old boy stood behind a small stage in Memphis, waiting for his turn to perform in a local talent show. His name was Elvis Aaron Presley. He wore simple clothing, a clean white shirt, neatly ironed trousers, and hair slicked to the side by his mother Gladys just minutes before they left home. No one could have imagined that this shy, trembling boy would one day become the greatest icon in the history of music. But that day, all Elvis felt was fear. Deep, suffocating fear that gripped his chest. He had no idea that what was about to happen would shake him so hard that it nearly crushed his dream before it had even begun. Elvis held his small guitar tightly. It wasn't an expensive guitar, not even new. It was bought with the family's little savings, a birthday gift from his loving mother. Gladys gently patted his shoulder, trying to give him strength. "Mama's right here, son. Just do your best. You can do it." Elvis nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his eyes. Until now, he had only sung at home, at church, or among close family. The world outside those walls felt bigger, harsher, and much more intimidating. When his name was called, Elvis walked onto the stage. A single yellow light shone on his face, making him painfully aware that all eyes were now on him. He took a long breath and looked at the audience. People who seemed indifferent, uninterested, even bored. Many didn't know who he was. There were no cheers, no encouraging smiles, just the sound of shifting chairs, a few coughs, and some teenagers who didn't even bother looking his way. For a 10-year-old kid, that was enough to make his knees weak. But Elvis tried to remember his mother's words, "Sing with your heart, not with fear." He lifted his guitar and began to play, his voice trembling at first. The song was a simple country ballad he learned from the family's old radio. His voice wasn't strong yet, not polished, but it carried something different, an honesty that flowed through every word. But even that wasn't enough to catch the crowd's attention. The audience wasn't just silent, they looked bored. When Elvis finished, there were no claps, no smiles. Even the judges only nodded absently, their faces emotionless. As Elvis walked off the stage, disappointment hit him like a cold wind. He felt like a failure. He felt small, too small, for the world outside. He hurried to his mother and lowered his head, fighting back tears. "Ma, I can't do it. No one liked it." Gladys immediately wrapped her arms around him, protecting him from the heartbreak he had just experienced. "You were wonderful, son. The world just isn't ready yet. But one day, they'll listen. I believe in you." Her words softened the pain, though they didn't erase it. Years later, at 15, Elvis tried again. He signed up to perform at a school music show. He was taller now, more mature, but the nerves were still there. He still carried the same guitar, the one that held more emotional value than anything money could buy. This time, though, he had learned a bit more. He'd been listening to rhythm and blues, gospel, and country. He had started to feel drawn to a different style of music, something raw, something soulful. But even at that school performance, the world wasn't quite ready. As Elvis sang, some of his classmates laughed at his hairstyle, which he kept longer than most boys. Others mocked the way he moved, his natural rhythm, the tiny motions his body made when he followed the music. None of them knew that the very things they mocked would someday define a king. But to young Elvis, each laugh felt like a small cut to his confidence. He went home from that event feeling empty. as if every attempt only dragged him back to the same pain he felt on that stage when he was 10. But life always gives second chances, sometimes third, fourth, or more, to those who keep trying. Elvis started taking small jobs after school, saving bits of money. One day in 1953, he gathered enough courage to walk into Sun Records, a small recording studio not far from home. He told them he wanted to record a song as a birthday gift for his mother. But deep down, he hoped someone, anyone, would hear something in his voice, something no one had heard on that stage years ago. When Elvis sang a simple ballad in front of the studio microphone, Marian Kaiser, the assistant at Sun Records, listened closely. She heard something different in his voice. Warmth, vulnerability, something she couldn't quite explain. After he finished, Marian wrote down his name and said, "You have a good voice, son." Those simple words felt like a beam of light in the darkness. For the first time, someone outside his family saw the potential he kept locked inside. But the road ahead was still not smooth. Elvis failed several more auditions. Producers, even musicians, told him his voice was too different, too wild, too out of place for the popular music of the time. "You're not meant to be a singer," one producer said harshly. "Stick to regular work. Music isn't for you." Those words hit Elvis like a hammer. But by then, he was no longer the fragile boy he once was. The pain still hurt, but he was starting to understand that pain was part of the journey. The turning point came a year later at Sun Records. One night, Elvis was relaxing in the studio with two musicians, Scotty Moore and Bill Black. They were experimenting, trying to find a style that suited him. But everything sounded ordinary, nothing special. Then suddenly, Elvis, without planning it, began singing an upbeat blues tune, strumming his guitar with playful energy. Scotty and Bill were stunned. They instantly jumped in, matching his rhythm. Something electrifying happened in that moment, a fresh sound that was exciting, unusual, and impossible to ignore. When Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, heard it, he knew instantly this was what he'd been searching for. This voice, this energy, this was different. He said, "We have to record this." And that very night, without Elvis realizing it, the foundation of a revolution was laid. When the recorded song aired on local radio in Memphis, Elvis's world changed. The phones at Sun Records started ringing. People wanted to know who this young man was, this singer who blended country with rhythm and blues. And it wasn't just the voice that intrigued people. It was the energy, the movement, the style. Everything he had once been mocked for was suddenly drawing attention. Elvis was invited to perform at small shows, and to his surprise, the audience reacted differently this time. They shouted, cheered. Some young women even screamed when he came on stage. The reaction stunned Elvis. It was hard to believe that the same stage that once ignored him now embraced him with such passion. But deep within himself, he never forgot that first painful performance. In a small interview years later, Elvis said, "I once stood on a stage and no one cared I was there. It almost made me quit. But I guess sometimes the world just needs a little longer to listen." Those words reflected the inner journey of a young man who once came close to giving up, simply because the world wasn't ready yet. As Elvis performed more often, his name grew larger. Show after show was filled with fans. He matured, no longer just singing, but living the music. The voice once ignored became the voice the world waited to hear. The style once mocked became iconic. And the stage that once hurt him now became his home. But if anyone asked Elvis about his journey, he always looked back to one moment, the day he first stepped on stage with a small guitar, trembling voice, and an indifferent audience. He had walked through a pain that nearly shattered his dream, yet that pain forged the determination that pushed him toward destiny. Because sometimes the path to greatness doesn't begin with applause. It begins with silence, with failure, and with the courage to try again, even when the world doesn't understand you yet.